It is Friday. It's the 13th of June. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is ARIRANG News, live from Seoul. Our top stories today. Much anticipated cabinet reshuffle. President Park Geun-hye replaces 7 of her ministers, including the finance minister, with a 3-term member of parliament and close policy confidant. World Cup 2014 opens in style with music, passion, J-Lo, and a 3-1 victory for Brazil. And as radical Islamist militants surge through Iraq, U.S. President Obama says the Middle Eastern country is going to need the help from the U.S. as well as the international community. We'll have those stories and more, but first, let us begin right here in this country. President Park Geun-hye has carried out a much-anticipated cabinet shakeup, putting the government now in full gear for her sweeping reforms. She nominated 7 new ministers out of a total of 17 on this Friday. Our presidential office correspondent Choi You-sun has the names of those who will now aid the president throughout the remainder of her term.
As highly expected, President Park has nominated her close aide and former ruling party floor leader Choi Kyung-hwan as finance minister and deputy prime minister. The former bureaucrat's experience in economic policymaking and later in parliament were highly valued in the pick, as the president has a 3-year plan to revitalize the local economy. President Park also named Choi Yang-hee, a computer science and engineering professor, as her science and ICT minister. The nominee's career-long contributions to the development of convergence technology and innovative thinking were acknowledged in his nomination. For new education minister and second deputy prime minister Kim Myung-soo, the president of the Korean Educational Research Association was named. He is expected to play a key role in reforming the country's education system. Chung Jong-sup was nominated to replace Security Minister Kang Byung-gyu, who came under fire for the government's lax management of April's ferry accident. As our culture minister, President Park named Chung Sung-gun the president of Arirang TV and Radio. The presidential office spoke highly of the former journalist's excellent communication skills and understanding of the president's administrative philosophy. Lee Ki-kwan, the former vice labor minister, was nominated to head the same ministry. To replace gender equality minister Choi You-sun, who was named the presidential secretary this week, ruling party lawmaker Kim Hee-jung was nominated. As for the maritime minister, who had offered to resign after the Sewol-ho ferry accident recovery ends, the presidential office said he will stay put for now. By naming her close aides into the cabinet and the presidential office, it's expected that President Park will further secure her authority in running state affairs. Her office says that there will be no other nominations until the government restructuring bill to establish a safety ministry passes parliament. Choi You-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now, this is the first since April's Sewol-ho ferry tragedy. A family member of a victim is suing the government and the ferry operator for damages. It's the mother of a Danon High School student killed in the disaster. She is seeking roughly $30,000 in damages. She says the ferry operator, Cheonghaejin Marine Company, was negligent in providing safety education for its crew and that the government was responsible for not providing proper oversight. The victim's mother said she may request more compensation once the trial begins. Meanwhile, there may be more changes, and on a different front. The U.S. government is going to replace its point man on North Korea, Glenn Davies, as Washington's push to denuclearize the regime has made really no progress. Multiple diplomatic sources in Washington say the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Affairs for East Asian Pacific Affairs will most likely be made U.S. Ambassador to Thailand. And the outgoing U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, Sung Kim, is being considered to fill Davies' position. Japan's recent deal with North Korea is even sweeter than previously thought. Now, as soon as Pyongyang formally restarts an investigation into the abduction of Japanese nationals in the late 1970s and early 80s, Tokyo has promised to lift sanctions on North Korea right away on 3 different fronts. Our Hwang Sang-hee has the details.
Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said Thursday that Tokyo will lift 3 of its sanctions against North Korea at once, as soon as Pyongyang launches a special reinvestigation committee to look into the abduction issue. The sanctions include a general travel ban between the two countries, a ban on money transfers, and a prohibition of North Korean ships entering Japanese ports. The reinvestigation committee is expected to be formed as early as late next week. Japan struck a surprise deal with North Korea last month, agreeing to lift some of its sanctions against the communist regime in exchange for more information on the fate of several Japanese citizens who were abducted by the North in the 1970s and 80s. Since then, the Abe administration has been proactive in trying to resolve the abduction issue. A possible trip to Pyongyang by the Japanese leader has even been talked about, although Suga said the current timing wasn't appropriate. The recent cozy ties between the two neighbors is a cause for concern, as it could dent trilateral cooperation among South Korea, the United States, and Japan. Up until the agreement, Japan had been secretive with its interactions with the North. Experts say from now on, Tokyo should hold behind-the-scenes consultations with its two allies to make sure their trilateral alliance for dealing with North Korea remains intact. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Well, the global community seeks ways to end wartime sex abuses in Korea is highlighting the need for Japan to take responsibility for forcing hundreds of thousands of women into sex slavery in the early 20th century. Speaking at an international forum on wartime sexual violence, a senior Korean diplomat said Japan's recognition of its past could prevent future cases of mass rape during times of war. Connie Kim reports.
The Korean government is stepping up its diplomatic campaign to press Japan to repent and compensate for the women it forced into sexual slavery during World War II. Speaking at the Ending Sexual Violence and Conflict Summit in London on Thursday, Korea's second Vice Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol said Japan's horrific crime should never be repeated and swift action needed to be taken for the sake of the victims.
The Japanese government needs to acknowledge its responsibility for the comfort women issue, make an official apology, and take responsible measures in order to prevent such tragedy from happening again.
The minister emphasized that Tokyo recognizing its past wrongdoings and taking action are needed to move forward.
We will not be able to construct a sexual violence-free world if there is no repent, apology, and probe into past crimes.
An estimated 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were used as sex slaves by the Japanese military during the war. However, Tokyo claims that the issue was settled through a 1965 treaty that normalized the two countries' diplomatic ties. The London gathering, the largest of its kind, hopes to find ways to bring an end to war-zone rape in parts of Africa and the Middle East. Bringing together more than 100 countries, the 4-day conference hopes to come up with practical measures to prevent wartime sexual violence and expand international support for the victims. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
The de facto maritime border dividing the two Koreas in the West Sea has become one of the most contentious areas in a conflict that's been bubbling for more than 6 decades now. And with North Korea continuing on with its provocations near the northern limit line, South Korea has announced plans to build a new naval base in the region by the end of this year. Kim Hyun-bin has more.
The South Korean military plans to finish construction of a naval base on one of its Western Sea border islands by the end of this year to better cope with North Korea's naval provocations. A South Korean naval officer said Friday that the base will be located on Baekneung-do Island, just 10 kilometers south of the de facto maritime border separating the two Koreas. Upon completion, the base will house a 570-ton guided missile patrol killer, or PKG, and a 170-ton patrol killer medium vessel, or PKM, and will accommodate up to 100 personnel. The total cost of the base is expected to come in at roughly $42 million. As money being spent to counter the North Korea threat and prevent another provocation in an area that has become one of the most contentious on the Korean peninsula. In March of 2010, the North torpedoed a South Korean warship in the area, killing 46 sailors. 8 months later, the North shelled Yeonpyeong Island, killing 4 people, including 2 civilians, In the years since, North Korea has continued to provoke its southern neighbor through naval exercises and firing off artillery that has landed south of the maritime border. In 2012, the communist regime constructed a naval base directly across from Baekneung-do Island, capable of holding 70 hovercrafts. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Now, is North Korea increasingly opening up to foreign media? Well, the international news agency AFP will open a new news bureau in Pyongyang by the end of this year, and this is according to the French weekly Le Point. The possibility was believed to have been discussed back in April when an AFP delegation led by its global news director Philippe Massonnet visited the north, and if that bureau opens, AFP will become the 5th foreign news agency operating within North Korea. AFP has yet to comment on this issue.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-yong live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks. Many eyes are on Iraq again these days, and we're now hearing that Iran will help Iraq fight off the Sunni insurgency that has its sights set on Baghdad. And this, as U.S. President Barack Obama says, the turmoil there demands immediate help. Here's Connie Lee with the latest development.
The U.S. may be getting involved in Iraq once again. With Islamist militants gaining ground in Iraq, U.S. President Barack Obama said he isn't ruling out U.S. action in the country.
I don't rule out anything because we do have a stake in making sure that these jihadists are not getting a permanent foothold in either Iraq or Syria, for that matter.
Speaking to reporters at the White House with Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott on Thursday, President Obama said the U.S. is looking at all the options to help the country.
I think it's fair to say that in our consultations with the Iraqis, there will be some short-term, immediate things that need to be done militarily. And our national security team is looking at all the options.
Iraq seems to be collapsing under the weight of Sunni Islamist militants called the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, or the ISIL. The offshoot terrorist group of al-Qaeda is surging through Iraq, seizing several towns and cities, and is now threatening to take the capital, Baghdad. Video released Thursday shows a victory parade of the fighters, clad in black, parading through the seized city of Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city. The rebels, displaying the black flag of the ISIL, want to create an Islamic State across Sunni areas in Iraq and in Syria. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And it's not yet time to bring in peacekeepers into Ukraine, and that's according to Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, adding that hope still exists behind Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko's promise to end the violence and start negotiations. Moscow will, however, submit another draft resolution on Ukraine to the UN Security Council on the alarm at the lack of progress to reach those ends. And this as Secretary General of the OSCE, Lamberto Zanir, heads to Russia's Rostov region to visit a Ukrainian refugee camp there. Relatedly, President Poroshenko, in a phone call, informed the Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin of his plans to, quote, regulate the situation in Ukraine's southeast, and amid reports of 3 Russian tanks moving into its territory. Moscow has since denied the claim. Now, nearly 1 decade after launching negotiations, Korea and Canada have finally initialed a free trade agreement. It's expected to be sealed before the year is up and go into effect next year. Park Geun-hye reports.
Korea is getting a step closer to expanding its free trade bloc. Seoul's trade ministry said Friday that the nation had initialed a free trade agreement with Canada. The two countries promised to do the official signing in the second half of this year, and if all goes well and the two nations' parliaments sign off, the bilateral trade pact is expected to take effect in 2015. Over the next 10 years, each side will get rid of tariffs on nearly 98% of traded goods. And while Korea's manufacturing sector is expected to get a boost from the trade pact, the local farming industry, especially those doing business in livestock products, may take a hit. Canada will lift all of its current 6% tariffs within 2 years on Korean automobiles that make up more than 40% of Korea's exports to the North American country. The Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency says Canada's abundance of natural resources, such as oil and natural gas, will be a boon for Korean exports of equipment associated with developing those resources. Canada is Korea's 25th largest trading partner, with the bilateral trade volume standing at almost $10 billion. If and when the deal goes into effect next year, Canada will become Korea's 12th FTA partner. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
Well, for all of you tech-savvy ones out there, the newest tablet PC from Samsung Electronics has been unveiled, and it's being billed as the thinnest and lightest model in the company's lineup. The curtain on the Galaxy Tab S was pulled back at a launch event in New York on Thursday. Now, it comes in two sizes, with either a 10.5-inch or 8.4-inch display, both boasting richer colors than standard LCD screens. The device is set to be released around the globe in July, and it features an AMOLED and adaptive display that automatically adjusts screen brightness depending on the application being used. Well, the 2014 World Cup officially kicked off in Brazil with the opening ceremony and the first match on Thursday, which was dawn on Friday morning here in Korea. And to tell us all about last night's game and what's in store for the next round of games, we are now joined in the studio by ARIRANG sports correspondent Song Ji-sun. So, Ji-sun, the opening ceremony was a celebration of Brazilian culture, and the performance, of course, at the opening match went according to plan, with Brazil scoring a victory. So, how did you enjoy it?
Well, absolutely, it was amazing and something not to miss when you're a football fan and also a fan of Brazil itself. This opening ceremony epitomized the beauty and the life of the people and the South American country there. And it all centered around a giant luminous bazooka ball, and with the dancers' performers dressed in traditional and local costumes. The ceremony was themed on nature, the people, and the sport football itself. And for the finale, the ball and center split into stage for pop singers Pitbull and Jennifer Lopez to sing the official song, "We Are One."
Right. I think those who tuned into the World Cup opening ceremony to find out what exactly an opening ceremony means for a World Cup, they found something that's a little bit unusual, because unlike the Olympic Games, the openers for the World Cup, they don't usually show the host country's culture and whatnot, but this one was just full of color, Brazilian color.
Right, yellow like the one I'm wearing, and the green as well, and the blue too.
Right, so you're looking very Brazilian today with a hint of green somewhere in your eyeshadow, I think. But the opening match, it was definitely an exciting one. Neymar, he's been the face of the Brazil's World Cup for so long. He stepped up and delivered, and he came out with a victory.
Exactly, and thanks to Neymar and the other players, the Brazilian fans were greeted with 3 goals. Now, the first goal also came from the home team, but it was an own goal by Marcelo on the 11th minute for Croatia. Now, Brazilian playmaker Neymar equalized soon after, though, and he slotted home a controversially awarded penalty in the second half to give Brazil the lead. Oscar secured the victory with a long-range shot near the end to make it 3-1 against Croatia.
You know, I think the Brazil's win was widely expected by many fans out there, but, you know, goals including their own for the opponent.
Right.
That came rather unexpected.
That
for
was
me.
also the first time for the Brazilian team too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But there have been ones in previous World Cup games. Am I correct?
Right.
Right. Well, that's not. It's a harsh one, right? Now, which teams are in action on day 2 of the games?
Well, there was just only one game on this Thursday, but we have 3 games in store. And starting with Group A, Mexico will go against Cameroon at 1 p.m. in the city of Natal. That will be 1 a.m. on a Saturday morning here in Seoul. And we also have the Group B match, one of the most anticipated one between Spain and the Netherlands. If you recall, they met at the final back in South Africa 4 years ago, with the Spaniards coming out on top and picking up the trophy for the first time. And Chile, another strong shot from the South American continent, will go against Australia at 6 p.m. at Cuyaba. That's the same venue Korea will be having their first match on Tuesday.
Well, this time around, of course, Korean fans are very, very popular all around the world and famous for their Red Devil cheers. And we have a wave of red every time World Cup goes on all across the city and the country.
Right.
But this time around, the time difference does not suit the supporters here too well. But still, we will see the Red Devils cheer, right?
Of course, because the World Cup without the Red Devils or people in red shirts cheering for the Korea team, it will be incomplete without those great masks on the streets here in Korea. Now, the Red Devil supporters of Korea's football team have announced that they will cheer for the footballers at Gwanghwamun Square for the group matches instead of Seoul Plaza in front of the City Hall. Now, tens of thousands of people gathered at Seoul Plaza has been a signature of Korea's football fever, but that has made it impossible as there's a memorial altar set for the Seoul ferry disaster perished in April's deadly sinking. But after discussion, Seoul's metropolitan government approved the football supporters' request, and they will put safety of the participating fans first. Now, of course, for those of you residing south of the Han River, they can go to the Yeongdong-daedo Boulevard in Gangnam-gu district. Now, to give you an idea, that's the 14-lane road stretching in front of the Samsung-yeok station and the COEX.
Well, cheering spots have been confirmed and World Cup goes into full swing with, of course, next week with Korean matches as well. And I think we'll be seeing a lot of very drowsy, tired office workers in the morning after the game.
Right.
But still, if we win, it will be worth the while. And yeah, we'll be spending many sleepless nights, including yourself.
Absolutely. And at least it's the weekend, so I can watch the games for tonight and Saturday night. And we'll be back with more news, and I'll be with you with updates on next week.
All right. Well, see you all throughout next week, and thank you for that coverage.
Pleasure.
The 2014 Brazil World Cup has finally begun and Mother Nature is cooperating. The opening ceremony was held under partly cloudy skies with temperatures of up to 26 degrees today. Now, the favorable weather is expected to go throughout this week and the next. And today looks to be our last rainy day for the foreseeable forecast in most regions, including here in Seoul, and sudden showers are expected along with some thunderstorm and hail in some places until tonight, with temperatures being a bit cooler than yesterday. And it's cloudy and foggy, which will gradually clear out as we move throughout the day. But until then, please be careful on the roads. Now we can finally look forward to favorable conditions tomorrow. It's forecast to be a dry and sunny weekend, and temperatures will soar to the high 20s, so planning an outing won't be a problem. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 26 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 28 and 24 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 25, Dokdo at 19, while Mangungang tops out at 20. Well, that's all for Korea. Here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's just about all from me this hour. I'm Moon Geun-hye. Check back with us at 4 p.m. Korea time for Business Today.